The first time a young banded eagle landed near Shadow, he was gone in less than 30 seconds. That was August 7th. The visitor arrived on the lookout snag. Shadow left. 1 week later, the same story no longer looked so simple. By August 23, Kaydee was standing inside Shadow's nest. She was moving his sticks. She was close enough to touch his beak. And instead of disappearing in 30 seconds, Shadow stayed. He watched her. He moved around the nest with her. He stepped away when she pushed too close. Then he came back. For more than 10 minutes, the cameras captured something Big Bear viewers had never seen before. Not Shadow instantly accepting a new mate. Not Shadow rejecting Kaydee completely. Something much more interesting. He was letting her remain close enough for the relationship to become complicated. And that may be the biggest change of all. To understand how different that moment was, go back to the beginning. Kaydee first appeared on the Friends of Big Bear Valley cameras on August 6th. She was still known by her band code KD1. She was a nearly mature bald eagle hatched in Southern California in March 2022. She had been banded in the Prado Basin. She was about 4.5 years old. At first, she was simply one more young eagle moving through Big Bear. Friends of Big Bear Valley noted that several bald eagles of different ages had been seen in the area. Big Bear Lake offers excellent habitat, food, water, perches, plenty of reasons for an eagle to visit. Then came August 7th. Shadow had been sitting on the lookout snag for roughly 45 minutes. A nearly mature banded eagle joined him. Shadow left in less than 30 seconds. The visitor waited about a minute and then flew in the same direction. That interaction was almost painfully short. No welcome, no long shared perch, no nest, just arrival and departure. At that point, nobody could honestly say what would happen next. The eagle might disappear forever. Instead, Kaydee kept coming back. On August 10th, she visited the nest. Then again. On August 13th, Shadow glided into the nest and KD1 followed not far behind. That alone was a major change from the lookout snag encounter. Now both birds were inside the same nest. Kaydee moved sticks. She came close enough to Shadow to briefly preen his wing. The entire scene lasted long enough for viewers to begin asking the question everyone knew was coming. Is something forming here? Friends of Big Bear Valley answered carefully. Maybe, maybe not. Breeding season was still months away. Only time would tell. That caution was important. But the next day, Shadow did something that added another layer. Kaydee was already perched on the twin pines. Shadow flew over and joined her. Same branch, then a lower branch beneath her. Several hours together. Now the story was no longer simply Kaydee chasing Shadow. Shadow was also choosing proximity sometimes. Then came the morning calls, the shared roost, the repeated twin pines visits, the 2-second follow after Shadow flew away. Kaydee's name. Day by day, the bird who once looked like a temporary visitor was becoming a regular character in the Big Bear landscape. Then, August 23rd brought everything into one small space. The nest. That morning, Shadow and Kaydee greeted the day from the same roost area. Kaydee later went to the nest alone. Shadow remained behind. She inspected the habitat, looked toward the camera, then left. Later, the two occupied separate snag trees. Shadow flew. Kaydee followed 2 seconds behind him. By evening, they were together again, this time in the nest. Kaydee arrived shortly after Shadow. Then she got to work. Large sticks on one side of the nest became her immediate project. She grabbed one, pulled, lifted, rearranged. Shadow stood nearby, watching. The scene was almost funny. Kaydee looked busy. Shadow looked like a supervisor who had not yet decided whether he approved of the renovation. Then he stepped toward the front porch. Kaydee continued. Shadow watched from the edge, and after a while he came back into the nest. They moved sticks in the same space. This is where the title "Let Her Stay Close" needs to be understood carefully. Shadow was not inviting unlimited contact. He was not surrendering every boundary. He was doing something more subtle, He remained in the interaction. When Kaydee moved a stick, he did not chase her from the nest. When she occupied the space, he allowed the visit to continue. When he stepped away, he later returned. That is tolerance. Then Kaydee tested the limit. Their beaks came together. For a second, it looked like exactly the kind of image people wanted to call a kiss. But wildlife is rarely that simple. Kaydee moved closer again. She appeared to nibble around Shadow's feathers and beak. Shadow did not seem comfortable with that. He reacted, pulled away, created space. Kaydee tried another close approach later. Again, Shadow made his preference clear. This is not a romantic failure. It is the most useful part of the entire interaction, because it shows that closeness has levels. Sharing a nest is one level. Moving sticks near each other is another. Beak contact is another. Nibbling at another eagle's feathers is another. Shadow seemed comfortable with some things, less comfortable with others. That gives us a much more believable picture than a simple yes or no relationship. He did not say, "Leave Big Bear." His behavior did not end the association. He said in effect through movement, "Not that close." And Kaydee stayed part of the story anyway. That distinction matters enormously. At the beginning of August, Shadow leaving could end an encounter in seconds. By August 23, Shadow stepping away did not end the evening. The birds remained around the same nest. He returned. They watched each other. They continued interacting. Then another day came. Kaydee returned to the nest again. She rearranged sticks again. The relationship had survived one awkward moment because wild animals do not treat every boundary like a dramatic breakup. They simply continue making choices. That is why this stage is so fascinating. We are watching familiarity being negotiated in real time. Kaydee appears to be the more assertive eagle. She closes distance. She explores. She follows. She tests. Shadow appears more measured. He stays, then moves, watches, returns, allows some proximity, rejects other contact. Over time, those choices could change. Seasonal hormones could change behavior. More familiarity could change tolerance. Or Kaydee could eventually leave and the entire summer story could end. Nothing is guaranteed. But the difference between August 7 and August 23 is already visible. Seconds became minutes. Distance became shared space. A visitor became Kaydee. That is progress in the story, even if it is not proof of a pair bond. Raptor biologist Pete Bloom has said he believes it is highly likely that Shadow and Kaydee, who currently appear to be forming a pair bond, could indeed be a pair when nesting begins. That is a powerful expert assessment. But the cameras are showing us the messy part before any final answer. And messy may be exactly what we should expect. Established pairs have history. They have repeated seasons to learn each other's movements. Shadow had that history with Jackie. Jackie knew the nest. Shadow knew Jackie. They had routines around sticks roosting, nest work, incubation, and raising young. Kaydee does not have that history. She is entering the space fresh. Of course, some interactions may feel awkward. Of course, Shadow may have boundaries. Of course, Kaydee may test them. The surprising thing is not that Shadow sometimes pulls away. The surprising thing is how often the story continues after he does. That is what I would watch now. Not whether every encounter looks affectionate, whether the next encounter happens. Because return is the pattern we can measure. Kaydee moves too close. Shadow creates space. Do they meet again tomorrow? Yes. Kaydee follows him. Shadow leaves. Do they share another tree later? Yes. Kaydee goes to the nest alone. Does Shadow eventually appear near her again? Again and again, the story finds another meeting. That does not make every meeting romantic. It makes the association persistent. And persistence is what transforms a random visitor into something worth following. Friends of Big Bear Valley made that transformation official in its own way on August 19th. The organization usually does not name nest visitors unless they remain long-term. But this time it made an exception. Kaydee 1 became Kaydee, even while acknowledging that nobody knew whether she would stay permanently. That name captured what the cameras had already done. They made her familiar, and Shadow's behavior was becoming familiar with her too. He knew the bird. He had encountered her repeatedly. He had shared perches with her. He had heard her calls. He had watched her in the nest. By August 23rd, there was no reason to treat Kaydee like a completely unknown intruder. That does not mean she had become his mate. It means she had become part of his current environment. And when an individual becomes part of your environment day after day, the smallest reactions start carrying meaning. Shadow stays. Shadow leaves. Shadow comes back. The audience notices all of it. There is also a biological reason the next few months could change the pace. Kaydee is about 4.5 years old, near the age when bald eagles become capable of breeding. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says most bald eagles reach breeding capability around 4 or 5 years old. Pete Bloom has described young eagles around this age as prospecting for territories. Kaydee may be evaluating Big Bear, and if she remains as the season advances stronger, nesting and courtship behavior could emerge. That is why August should not be treated as the final test. August is the introduction. The real pressure comes later, when fall becomes winter, when nest work matters more, when territorial behavior becomes more important. If Kaydee is still there, then Shadow's current tolerance may become something stronger, or the pattern may break. That uncertainty is exactly what keeps the story alive. And maybe the most emotional way to understand the current moment is not to ask whether Shadow is letting Kaydee replace Jackie. He is not. No eagle replaces another eagle's history. Jackie's years in Big Bear are complete and unique. The question is what Shadow does now. That is all. He is still in the territory. Kaydee is appearing beside him. The camera is documenting their choices. We can care about those choices without turning them into human betrayal or human romance. Shadow does not need to forget Jackie for Kaydee to stand in the nest. Kaydee does not need to become Jackie for Shadow to tolerate her. A new association can exist without erasing the old one. That may be why viewers are slowly warming to the awkwardness. Kaydee is not polished. She arrived with subadult markings. She got a feather stuck in her nostril. She wrestles sticks like they personally offended her. She pushes closer to Shadow than he sometimes seems to want. Then she comes back the next day. There is something impossible not to like about that persistence, and Shadow's caution creates the perfect contrast. She pushes. He measures. She returns. He stays a little longer. If that continues, their relationship may not change through one huge dramatic moment. It may change through thresholds. 30 seconds, then several minutes, then several hours. Separate branches, then the same branch structure. Nest visits alone, then nest visits together. A brief beak touch, then maybe someday comfortable close contact that does not make Shadow step away. Those thresholds are what make the next footage valuable. And we already have the first comparison. August 7. An unfamiliar banded eagle arrives. Shadow leaves in under 30 seconds. August 23. Kaydee is in the nest with Shadow for more than 10 minutes. She moves sticks. They share space. She tests his boundary. He steps away. Then he comes back. That is not the ending. It is evidence that the beginning has changed. There is one more reason this progression is emotionally powerful. It gives viewers a measurable change without forcing a conclusion. We can compare time. August 7, less than 30 seconds after the young banded eagle arrived, Shadow left. August 14, Shadow voluntarily joined Kaydee in the Twin Pines and remained in the same tree for hours. August 19th. The two birds spent roughly 3 hours on separate branches in the Twin Pines. Then Kaydee followed Shadow 2 seconds after he flew. August 23. They shared the nest for more than 10 minutes, moved sticks in the same space, touched beaks, and tested boundaries. That is a much stronger story than saying they look romantic. The timeline itself carries the emotion. Seconds, hours, repeated mornings. repeated returns. The audience can feel the distance changing because the behavior gives them something concrete to compare. And comparison is exactly what the next chapter needs. If the next close nest visit lasts 20 minutes, that is new. If Shadow remains relaxed while Kaydee works beside him, that is new. If Kaydee tries another affectionate-looking contact and Shadow no longer moves away as quickly, that would be new. If the opposite happens, and Shadow becomes less tolerant, that would also be new. Either direction keeps the story honest. That is why this script should not tell viewers what they are supposed to believe. It should make them notice the change. Then, let the next footage challenge it. There is also a subtle difference between tolerance and participation. Tolerance is Shadow remaining nearby while Kaydee does her own thing. Participation is Shadow stepping into the same activity. On August 23rd, viewers saw both. For a while, Kaydee handled the sticks while Shadow watched. Then he re-entered the nest and joined some of the work. That shift is small, but it creates a stronger question than, did they kiss? Will shared activity increase? That is the question that can carry weeks of content, because as the season moves toward fall and winter, the nest itself may become more important. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service notes that bald eagle pairs often reuse and enlarge established nests, and that courtship and nest building are part of the breeding cycle. Big Bear's schedule is local and seasonal, and Friends of Big Bear Valley has cautioned that the serious breeding period is still ahead. So if Kaydee remains, the nest may eventually become the place where the relationship is tested most clearly, not by one cute clip, by work. Does she bring material? Does Shadow bring material? Do they remain in the nest together longer? Do they coordinate around the same structure? Does Kaydee continue returning when Shadow is absent? Does Shadow begin arriving when she is already there? These are story questions, not science lectures. Each one can produce a new episode, and each one can be answered by behavior. That is what makes them powerful. The audience does not need a narrator telling them this proves a bond. They can watch the pattern deepen or fail. And perhaps the most interesting possibility is that Shadow's boundaries may not disappear. They may simply become more specific. An established pair is not two birds touching constantly. Jackie and Shadow themselves had years of tiny disagreements. Stick placement, space, timing. One bird wanting to do something the other bird clearly did not. Familiarity did not erase personality. So if Shadow sometimes steps away from Kaydee, that does not automatically mean the association is failing. The better question is what happens after the boundary. Does Kaydee respect the space? Does Shadow return? Do they continue sharing the habitat? On August 23, the answer was yes. That is why the push-away moment and the stay-close moment belong in the same story. They are not contradictions. They are different parts of the same interaction. And that complexity may help viewers connect with Kaydee more honestly. She is not a perfect new partner appearing on cue. She is a young eagle learning. She gets too close. She pulls at sticks. She comes back. She seems endlessly curious. Shadow is not a grieving character following a human script either. He is an adult bald eagle responding moment by moment, sometimes calmly, sometimes cautiously, sometimes with clear boundaries. The camera does not need to turn either bird into a symbol. Their actual behavior is already compelling. The emotional hook comes from contrast. A few weeks ago, a young eagle could arrive and Shadow could be gone in seconds. Now Kaydee can stand beside him in the nest long enough to make the situation awkward. That is enormous progress in story terms. Not because it proves destiny, because it proves familiarity has changed. The next stage may be comfort, and comfort is often quieter than viewers expect. It may not arrive with a dramatic beak touch. It may arrive when nothing happens. Kaydee stands close. Shadow does not move. She works. He works. 5 minutes pass. Then 10. No chase. No warning. No need to create space. If that day comes, longtime viewers will recognize why it matters. They will remember August 7. They will remember the 30 seconds. They will remember August 23. They will remember Shadow stepping away when Kaydee pushed too close. And they will see the difference without anyone needing to explain it. That is the kind of payoff this story should build toward. A visible change the audience has earned by watching the earlier chapters. And that future comparison may come sooner than anyone expects. Kaydee has already shown that she is willing to return after awkward encounters. She does not seem to treat one moment of distance as the end of the story. That persistence gives Shadow repeated opportunities to make a different choice the next time. Stay longer, stand closer, join the work sooner, or decide that the boundary still matters. Every return resets the test. That is why the nest has become such a powerful stage for this relationship. The same small space forces choices that a huge valley can hide. Inside the nest, distance becomes visible, and every inch suddenly tells a story. So the next time Kaydee comes back to the nest, watch Shadow's distance. Do not look only for a dramatic kiss. Look at where he chooses to stand, how long he remains, whether he leaves immediately, whether he returns, whether he joins the work, whether Kaydee can simply exist near him without forcing a reaction. Because the biggest sign of growing familiarity may eventually look almost boring. 2 eagles, same nest, no argument, no chase, no one leaving. Just Kaydee close to Shadow, and Shadow deciding that close is finally close enough.